Policies here of record on March 1st did receive a physical call letter to an election for chairman on Wednesday of next week, and I encourage every single PC here to attend it. What Morgan's not telling you is if you proceed down this path, we're going to end up in a situation like LD3. They're LD3izing LD4, and it will turn this group led by this board into a club and not an official Republican Party organization. I don't think we want that. I agree with local control, and I also agree with following not just the bylaws to like, but all of the bylaws as they're written and thinking. One last thing is, this is an inappropriate vote, it's an inappropriate thing to do to pull ourselves away from the Republican Party. I, for one, will not participate in it. It's the wrong thing to do, and I suggest those of you who want to stay within the Republican Party also not participate, just abstain.
The yeas are 102. The nays are 2. The statement passes. It is adopted. What I'm going to say to you is unfortunately true. Jeff Greenspan came up here and said that it's going to happen. So, he's a member at large there that he's telling us, at least, not Chair Berland, but he's telling us that they're going to go ahead anyway. And what I'm going to say to you is this, you guys have just declared yourselves able to self-govern, okay? I didn't make the decision, the board didn't make the decision. It's all of us, it is our body. And if they want to trample our body, then we're gonna have to stand up for it.
All right. Well, welcome. Hang on a second here. Welcome to Bigger Truth Media. I am Scott McMahon, and I have Morgan Perry with me today. I'm really excited about this. We talked last Sunday, and we ended up talking for almost 3 hours. and so we've got just over an hour here today. And what we just watched was 2 meetings ago for LD3, which was just last week, or LD4, I'm sorry, yeah. In Arizona. Just a little explainer, if you're not in Arizona, Maricopa County is 65% of the voters in Arizona, roughly, are in Maricopa County. It's a huge county, and there are 20 legislative districts within the county. And so they're called LDs. And LD4 is the second largest legislative district in the county. And Morgan was elected just over a month ago in a special election to replace the previous chair who had resigned. And after he was elected, MCRC, which is run by the chair is Craig Berland, and the first vice chair is Shelby Busch. And they are both, I wrote about them in my last story, that they are both disruptors. They've kind of enacted tyranny, and this isn't the first LD that's been attacked by MCRC, but they are trying to enact top-down tyrannical rule over those legislative districts. And so what happened, and I'm going to let you really tell the story, Morgan, because you obviously understand it better than I do. But Morgan, he's going to tell the story here about how he was elected 3 times in the last few weeks. And so good. With that, we'll start there. Take it away, Morgan.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Scott. And first of all, thanks for having me on. Yes, it's been a pleasure talking with you both last Sunday and now. And hopefully this can shed some light for people who are hearing one side of the story or not hearing much at all. So yeah, on about February 5th, thereabouts, the previous chair resigned, and that gave us just enough window to do what we were supposed to do, which is to put out a meeting call for a replacement chair election, so election of a new chair in the vacancy of the chair position. And so we did what LD4 has done for years and years, as long as any PC's recollection can bring up that we emailed out our meeting notice. And we have a substantial email list, and our bylaws in particular allow us to email notice, and also put the onus on the LD4 PCs to be on the email list. So we have probably 85 to 90% or so of the emails of the PCs, and then maybe some of them are spouses and they only get one per household or whatever, or some just are not interested enough to receive it that way, or they receive it another way. Anyway, so we did that. So this was kind of business as usual, and then we had our election, and I won by 10 votes, and then we carried on with the first vice chair election because I was first vice chair, so we had to replace my spot, and we had announced the possibility of that as well. So that was all well noticed ahead of time. We have a 10-day notice requirement. So then a set of these PCs, which you refer to as disruptors, they petitioned, they challenged the outcome of the election. They challenged the election because of a kitchen sink worth of reasons. One of the voiced reasons from my failed competitor for chair was that I was an incumbent, and so I had an unfair advantage. She had an unfair disadvantage in running for chair, and I mean that's kind of life. I don't know how we're gonna unwind that. But there were just a host of them, and so we, as a board, all of these complaints were made to MCRC. None of these challenges were made timely to the LD4 board. So out of the gate, it's certainly arguable that there was no timely challenge, therefore the results stood. But when we finally got a hold of them after a week of cajoling, shaming, pushing the MCRC to turn them over to us after they said, ooh, we've received challenges, but they wouldn't turn over the actual challenges to us. I finally, I guess, shamed them into it, and they did, and we reviewed them all, and we found one to have technical merit. And when I say that, I mean that technically we did not do what we should have done, but even if we had, even the people who were challenging did not claim that this had an outcome on the effect, or an effect on the outcome, excuse me. So rather, okay, we didn't technically do it right, and we should have done it a different way. And that way is, according to our best interpretation of our Arizona Revised Statutes, ARS, and interpretations of those statutes by court rulings, we should have US mailed this, even though in everybody's memory, email is how we've always noticed, but again, this time's challenge, so we had to look at it. And we could do email if we had positive opt-ins from our body that they would accept email instead of US mail. So we'll go ahead and move that direction over the next coming months, but we hadn't done it yet. So what we did as proactively as a board is we decided, okay, we'll honor this, even though we don't think it had an outcome in the effect. Nobody's arguing an effect on the outcome. I don't know why I'm saying that. An effect on the outcome, and none of the challengers actually argued that. They just said we did it wrong. We said, well, all right, rather than our being tyrannical, rather than me being a chair who thinks, oh, I won and I don't want to, I don't want to give it up. We just decided, okay, let's put it before the body. So we did another call for the next monthly meeting and said, there have been challenges. We want to put it before the body, whether you want to carry out, accept the results of the February election, or whether you want to have a revote and kind of a redo election. And there are procedures for how you go about that. The concept of doing a redo election is that you keep everything the same. So candidates the same, electorate the same, rules the same, all that, except you correct whatever you did wrong. So we set it all up proactively to do that. We sent out the USPS notice in proper time frame. It had all the correct components to it. And then 2 days later, after we did that, MCRC had their monthly meeting. So that's the Maricopa County Republican Committee. That's the county leadership, EGC, Executive Guidance Committee. I just refer to it as MCRC leadership meeting. And they declared that I had broken all these bylaws and that the first election was invalid. Not only that, but they declared that our call for the next one. So we were already proactively cleaning up and being as above board as possible. Put it before the body, see if they wanted to redo it, give my opponent another chance to prevail, and they declared that call was illegitimate, and they did it on 3 bases. Can I share the 3 bases?
Sure. So just to recap first. So yeah. what you're saying is that you held the first election, yep. And then MCRC. Was it MCRC that put the challenge, or the disruptors within your district, your LD?
So there were a total of 10 people that challenged. 4 of them I could not demonstrate to be any PC within Maricopa County. So I think they were, it could have been somebody like Brian Ferentz filling out something and claiming to be somebody else, a fictitious person or something like that. But
so those were on the credentials, or the people that you actually saw, the people there that aren't?
No, they were just filled out, as John Doe, Jane Doe on the MCRC website.
Oh, I see.
And submitted. So when
these were challenges that were filed with MCRC instead of with you.
Right. So all 10 of the challenges were filed only with MCRC. None of them were filed with us.
And so they were, okay. So they weren't even disclosed to you.
Right. I had argued literally for almost a week to get them.
Wow. And so you got them, and then you you decide, okay, well, we're going to be proactive because we know that MCRCs, they're probably going to do something with it. They're going to take these challenges more seriously than perhaps they ought to be. So let's just, let's let the body have the opportunity to affirm that this is what they wanted to do. Yeah, give them another chance to basically de-elect you or unelect you.
Yeah, I would say my reasoning, and hopefully the rest of our board, LD4 board's reasoning, is let's see if there's legitimacy to this. Like, forget about what any other authority may or may not do. Mm. Is there any legitimacy to anything here? And so we went through all of them, and basically only one of them out of the kitchen sink that they threw at us had what we considered legitimacy.
Sure.
So and again, go ahead.
Right. And so, yeah, and you kind of already covered that. So, so then with MCRC, when they came, this was after you sent you had already mailed out these. Do you think they knew that you had mailed out these notices?
They did, because Chair Berland's appointed lead for his committee that was looking into this is a guy that Berland knew was hostile to me already, because he was on a email string in which this guy, smeared me as being hysterical in email. Interesting. This guy went beyond his report, his written report, and he said, oh, and by the way, LD4's board has called for another meeting, and we found that to be that call to be invalid for 3 reasons. And the 3 reasons were, and this was in the last county leadership meeting, and in real time, every time I stood up and said point of clarification and asked. But the first one was there were 3 different calls. He said one in U.S. mail, one in email, and one on the website. And so I raised my hand, was recognized. I stood up and I said, point of clarification, do all of those 3 that you refer to as calls, do they refer to themselves as calls? And he didn't have an answer. And I said, well, I know what the answer is. And the answer is only the USPS one referred to itself as an official call. The others did not refer to themselves as official calls. They referred to themselves as information for the meeting.
So they was misrepresenting what it was.
Exactly. And no one was able to say otherwise. And I can document emails. The email is easy to document. It went out to several hundred people, so everybody can see it does not call itself an official call. And I made a point of that because I thought about that before it went out. I thought, yeah, that would be bad. But not only that, he didn't say that they had contradictory information. He simply said they had differing information. So, like, you know, is he going to complain that one of them has a comma where the other one doesn't or something? And that, anyway, so anyway, that's the first.
Is that the level of the differences? Is, minor
that's the nature of the attack that we're under. And literally today, one of their group emailed the entire county leadership saying about another LD that, well, this guy's argument is false and misleading because it quotes a comma where there is no comma in the actual bylaw. And
are you serious? That's
totally serious. I'll send this to you. And it literally is just a typo, and it doesn't change the meaning. The person who wrote it, I think, would readily recognize, yeah, you don't put a comma between a subject and a predicate, and he did, and it was just a mistake. And it doesn't change any meaning either way. But this guy tried to argue that it was deceiving and change the meaning.
So the only reason why a person would do something like that, like to argue with you over a comma, is because they have such a strong predisposition to fight with you that they cannot accept you. I mean,
I take it one level deeper. It's not that they're fighting against me, is that they are power hungry. They are hungry and thirsty for power, and nothing will stand in their way. So that is, it's a human history. It's a truth of human nature throughout history. And we're just facing it here. Unfortunately, it's among people who claim to be conservatives, claim to be Republicans, claim to want, the rule of law and constitutionality brought back to America, but instead they're just trying to build their own little fiefdom.
Yeah.
So that was reason number one. Reason number two.
Hang on just a second. Jason here in Michigan says, any problems with political opponent t-shirts? That's when you know that you have problems.
Well, the political opponent t-shirts came up in January,
right,
when I was running with a slate of candidates for member at large at the county, and there was an opposing slate, basically led by Jeff Greenspan, the guy that you saw in the intro video, and the person who was running the election, person who, if she has a reputation, it's attempting to be for election integrity, Shelby Busch, and she had overall authority over the entire election process at that meeting, the county mandatory meeting in January of 2024. And she allowed, oversaw, possibly encouraged and supported, I don't know, but at least allowed probably the grossest expression of poll worker electioneering that anybody has seen in this country. They had t-shirts for the other slate, and a large chunk of the people that she was overseeing in credentialing, in ballot handling, in ballot counting, they were all wearing, large percentage were wearing this other slate's t-shirts. It was just over the top, obvious electioneering. And I've been a poll worker, I've been a poll observer. This past presidential preference election on last Tuesday, I was an inspector for the county government running a polling location. And I can tell you that it would be illegal if it were done in a public election, and it is reprehensible and unethical in any case.
Well, yeah, and these people call themselves the experts in election integrity.
Right.
And so, there's clearly no integrity in electioneering like that. That's just
exactly. So I've known Shelby for well over 2 years. I volunteered for her organization, We the People Arizona Alliance, for a good 2 years or so. At 2 Decembers ago, before she got into county board leadership for our party, I literally would have taken a bullet for her. I felt like she was doing such a good job with with what work she was doing in election integrity and investigative work. And then she got into county leadership, and the abuse of power that I have seen and the lack of ethical behavior has been stunning to me over and over and over and over again. And she went from maybe 1 or 2 times listening to me and having a dialogue about her poor behavior to basically just shutting me out entirely. And so that's where we are. So like one of the things I say about life is it's complicated. People are complicated. Human behavior and psychology is complicated. I still, believe it or not, I still think Shelby is doing some good work in election integrity. But when somebody who severely lacks personal integrity is trying to operate in that space, there will come a time where their lack of personal integrity destroys their work. And I think it's happening with Shelby.
So you told me when we were talking the other day, one of the stories that really stuck with me since we're on Shelby, let's stay here for a minute,
Okay.
was when the election that she was managing when they ran out of ballots. Can you tell us that story?
Yeah, exactly. And I'll just finish off the one from January. So on the electioneering, I went up to the counting room. I talked to the executive director of MCRC, and he said, how do you think it's going? He was kind of proud of it. And I said, well, great, except for the electioneering. And he's like, what do you mean? And I said, well, look around. And he's like, oh, yeah, that's a problem. And same thing with the congressional candidate who was up there. Same thing, kind of immediate recognition of, ooh, that's not right. And then when I talked with Shelby moments later, and I said the same thing, she said her response was nowhere in the same category. She said, oh, that doesn't matter. And that was it. That was the end of the issue for her and MCRC officially. A adversely affected candidate made the complaint, and she dismissed it out of hand. So, Shelby, the reports are out of LD26. That's another one of our LDs in Maricopa County. And the county leadership worked hand in glove with the deposed first vice chair out of LD26. So I attended the meeting that was held well, in which the body voted him out of office and actually also voted him to be silenced because he was speaking out of order repeatedly. And so roughly 2/3, I believe, just from memory, voted him out. And then they voted in a new first vice chair. And basically he kind of vowed, I'm going to get back at you. And he worked with the county leadership, unbeknownst to anybody, kind of on our side, in our group, and notably unbeknownst to the LD26 chair. So what they did is they kind of got what they said was a majority, I don't know if it is or not, of PCs in LD26 to sign a petition for his removal, which is how it would go. My understanding is they were coercive. They used unethical tactics of trying to get people and maybe succeeding getting PCs to sign what they didn't know what they were signing. And obviously PCs should never sign what they don't know what they're signing, but nonetheless, neither should anybody pressure somebody into signing that way. Mm-hmm. So they held this MCRC leadership-led meeting to vote for whether the LD chair should be removed and whether a new one should be voted in. And they held a first ballot. So at least this time it was on paper from the PC, and they put them in, and it did not advance, but there was so the motion to remove did not advance, but they had a question as to whether there was one more ballot than there were credentialed PCs. And so for some period of time at the meeting.
What was the margin on the vote?
So it was tight, but, and you're asking me to do it off of memory here.
But it was more than one. I'm assuming it was more than one.
No, it was maybe one. But in order for a motion to carry and be passed, it can't be a 50-50 dead heat. That means that a motion fails.
Right.
And so either way, whether if there was an extra vote, and I'll say that, I'll get to that in a second, over how many PCs were credentialed. So let's say it was 70 PCs credentialed and there were 71 votes cast. I think that is the actual number they were looking at the time. Whether you counted a 71st for the existing chair or against the existing chair, neither way did it make a majority vote against the chair to remove. So in that regard, it could strongly be argued that the motion failed either way. Doesn't matter that there's one extra. You could also argue, well, there's something wrong if there's one extra ballot, right? So I get that. But then somewhere further on in the meeting, they determined, oh, we were wrong. There was actually 71 people credentialed here. So there were, in the first ballot, there were equal number of cast ballots as there were PCs credentialed.
So there actually was zero problem.
There was zero problem, and they could have just said, yeah, okay, the results of the ballot hold now that we've corrected the credential report and corrected the number of PCs in attendance, but they didn't. So they said, okay, well, we need to do a revote, but they didn't bring enough ballots. So what did they do? This is like how the meeting went from here, just went crazy. And the senior MCRC leadership person at this meeting was Shelby Busch, the first vice chair of the county, and the person who, claims to have a reputation for election integrity, is trying to build her reputation on election integrity. So what does she oversee at this point? I shake my head. She oversees holding a verbal confession of vote by pairs of PCs to the panel of the Republican or the MCRC leadership and maybe a few other observers in a kind of ante room from the main room, and they go in pairs and they verbally confess to that panel of MCRC leadership and to Shelby specifically who they're voting for.
So they're confessing
what their vote is.
The people that they're confessing to, they're all disruptors that have all demonstrated antagonistic behavior towards people who do not vote the way that they want.
I will say the bulk of them are. As I said, there were some extra observers.
Even if there was one in there that has acted in a threatening, antagonistic manner towards people who have disagreed with them.
Yeah, I mean,
this is just insane.
The LD26 chair has voted some with them and mostly not with them across the year. I have the voting record. Yeah, somebody's saying, what? Totally. But it gets worse. It gets worse. Okay. So again, I wasn't there, but my understanding from these reports that I've read and that I've heard from people who were there and who were reported from there. So Shelby, like with a Post-it note pad or something similar, she writes down how the PC voted, and then she sticks it into a ballot box. And that process from her writing it to sticking into the ballot box where it's lost into the group of votes, my understanding is that it did not get a solid review from the people in the room. So what she wrote and what they said was a very, very weak link there that Shelby had ample opportunity.
There's no way to know whether or not she actually wrote down the vote that the person spoke.
I would say the traceability of that step is near zero, and whether it had any verifiability at the time or reasonable verifiability, I would say is certainly dubious. So that's part of how it got worse. Then they count this vote. Okay, they count this, and the outcome is a dead heat. Okay. No, I take it back. Not exactly. So I believe it was 35 for removal, then 33 against removal, and 2 abstaining. Okay, that's my understanding. Now, under Robert's rules, the 2 abstaining wouldn't count in the total of how to calculate a majority. But this specific situation is covered under the MCRC bylaws, and it's what they used to go in and take over and run the election for LD26. So they better have read it. And what it says is that removal can be accomplished by, and this is the crux of it, a majority of those present. All right. So if you've got 70 present because they're voting, and it's not even voting and present, it's just present. So if one didn't go into the ballot confessional because they thought it was a travesty, and then 70 did, and 35 of them vote for the motion, 33 against, and 2 abstain, you've either got 70 or 71 present, depending on how you look at it.
Right.
35, any way you slice it, is not a majority of 70 or 71. And yet they ruled that it passed.
So they really, what this was, I mean, this is what they were trying to do to you. They did it to LD26. They went in and they manufactured the circumstance to say that there was a vote to remove the chair. But really, I mean, according to the bylaws or to the statute or to the, what it was to the, according to
the bylaws, CRC bylaws.
Okay. The bylaws, so according to the bylaws that they did not remove, but they just say that they did. So it's really by fiat, by dictatorial.
Right. I mean, if you're going to be super generous toward them, you'll say that they just didn't pay attention to the bylaws and they followed the Robert's rules, which are trumped by bylaws. But if that's the case, they should be, sending, apologies and gift cards and whatnot to the LD chair they deposed wrongly, and they should be immediately writing to all the PCs that they grossly maladministered that election, and they should back off of any time in the future they decide that they're the election experts, they're the professionals, they're the adults in the room. No, absolutely not. Just terrible, unbelievably bad.
Yeah, it is. Like Trump 24 says, rules for thee, not for me.
Absolutely.
And so that is just a crazy, terrible, horrible story. And so that was that Forrest that was the chair there?
Yeah, Forrest Woodwick. Woodwick, who, by the way, I'll just say, Forrest Woodwick is an excellent human being. Really, really respect and appreciate that man.
I haven't had a chance to talk to him yet. I've talked to three other Maricopa County LD chairs, in addition to you. And I want to bring this up just as an example. So Monica Harris says, are we going to hear the other side of the story? Morgan is known to tell stories. So there is a podcast, Monica, that I'm sure you have watched frequently by Michelle Swinnick, where you can hear the other side of the story every single day. Have you been able to tell your side of the story yet?
I would say no. The megaphones and the kind of the repeaters that they have are far outside of my reach. So yeah, this is definitely just a start to even up the playing field.
Right, and this is a good example just of how they do everything they can to try to discredit you. Saying you're known to tell stories. I mean, you've been telling stories, but that doesn't mean that they're untrue stories. Yeah, and the reality is that everything that you have said has been confirmed to me personally by the other chairs in the county that I've spoken with, and even by people outside of the county and in other counties in Arizona. And furthermore, the pattern of behavior is 100% consistent with everything that I have seen over the last 3 months in every other state that I've looked at. So this is further evidence that this is a nationwide operation to infiltrate the grassroots and turn the grassroots again, really psychologically manipulate the grassroots and turn them against the party. One, to hurt our chances in the election this year. Because what you're doing, I mean, you just spent the last month of your life working as hard as you can just to defend yourself against a tyrant from above that's trying to take over and overrule the voice and the will of your PCs.
Yep.
And so this is objectively wrong. Couple others there. Jason Mickelborn says, how sad this crap is going on in our country. What a waste of time and energy from fighting Democrats. Oh, wait. Like, that's kind of the point, right?
Yeah, good point there.
Yeah. Joe Brandis says, if we the people gained power, what do they want to accomplish?
All right.
So you're talking about We the People Arizona Alliance, that's Shelby Busch's organization. So
Yeah, that's the way I'm reading the question.
Yeah.
So again, people are complicated. Social groups are complicated. I don't think there's a monolithic answer to that question. I told you about my experience and history with Shelby and her significant other. I didn't mention, but him as well, and then kind of their third wheel in their group, Chris Hansel. He and I have been good friends. Recently, he was one of the people who came in and was an operative of theirs to dislodge me a third time from the chairmanship of LD4, disrespecting the vote of the membership the week before. So I unfortunately have to conclude that his judgment, his vision of what's going on is severely compromised. But what do they want to accomplish? Shelby, again, this is just my speculation, my conclusion. She wants a national reputation for election integrity. I think Chair Berland and Shelby and a lot of them want to take over the Arizona Republican Party. I think that has been clearly demonstrated by their bylaw breaking, propping up in support of and underhanded takedown of Jeff DeWitt in support of Jim O'Connor in January. I think it's kind of beyond clear that that's the case. They thought they could take over this past January, and Donald J. Trump himself stepped into the situation and gave them the smackdown. And yet none of them seem to kind of like wake up and go, oh my God, we're fighting Donald Trump's side. Like, the guy himself had to step in and give us the smackdown. Maybe we're on the wrong side. Maybe we're the power mongers. Maybe the other people who are resisting our takeover are actually seeking restoration of American liberties and justice and constitutionality. But I just don't think they have the self awareness, the ability to reflect, and the integrity to do that, generally speaking.
And just a little bit of backstory. The way that Trump came in is, they wanted to elect as chair Jim O'Connor,
right?
Who is he really kind of presents himself as the spiritual leader of this organization, and they have these prayer meetings, and then they go and attack people, so that it was clear that there was evidence that was discovered shortly before, even just days before, there was a story that was run, I think, in the Arizona Independent that showed that Jim O'Connor he's the chair of the Arizona Corporation Commission, and that he had actually asked counsel and the Arizona Corporation Commission if there's a conflict of interest, if he would chair both of the ACC and of AZGOP, and somehow that was discovered through a FOIA request or something, I assume a FOIA request, and published just days before the convention.
Yeah.
And Trump then really in that time frame, because there's so much happened from what I understand in those 2 or 3 days before that convention, that
Yeah.
it was a crazy time. And then all of a sudden Trump comes in and it was expected, from what I understand, that Kari Lake was going to actually endorse Jim O'Connor. But then Trump came to the scene first and endorsed Gina Swoboda. Kari Lake, then she went on the stage and said that she endorsed Gina Swoboda also, and she was booed primarily by the disruptors. Correct? It was the disruptors.
I actually think she got booed by both sides.
By everybody. Yeah.
It was a pretty solid booing. I think she deserved it. I have very strong sourcing for saying that Shelby misled her to endorse that other slate of Mal candidates, and that she was ignorant that whole slate of Mal candidates a week before she endorsed them had been to a person firmly against ballot chasing. And Kari Lake has made it a point that she's going to run a huge ballot chasing campaign. She just didn't know. And the problem with that is, okay, you don't know something, but then do a little due diligence. And that's the problem, is she just isn't doing any due diligence, and she's taking, as gospel what Shelby Busch and perhaps others are feeding her and misleading her. And so to me, that's again, I've heard this from what I consider to be a reliable source. I'd love it if the reliable source who says that they heard it directly from Kari Lake's mouth would come out and say it, but I can't divulge that confidence. But if this person is correct, then Kari Lake was led by the nose by Shelby Busch and did no due diligence and endorsed a set of people that most of which, or all of which, she's probably never met, doesn't know. And in the process, Shelby smeared me and our group as anti-Trump and anti-election integrity, which is nonsense. We had a person on our slate who, is personal acquaintances and friends with Trump, and I've done a whole bunch of stuff for election integrity, including, working the polls and becoming a poll judge and writing a 6-page declaration that ended up going into Kari Lake's lawsuit. And I was told that Kurt Olson said it was one of the finest ones in the group. And Kurt Olson is one of Kari Lake's attorneys. And that was from my experience being a poll judge in 2022 at a location where it had the tabulator printer subversion, I'll call it. And I figured it out what was going on in real time at our location. And by the end of the day, last few hours of the day, I was able to, if anybody wanted to have their ballot tabulated on site at our location, I was able to make it happen. So, it's just a malicious smear. And to me, it says, if this is true, which I believe it is, that Shelby is willing to put her own interests above her principal candidate's interest by throwing her under the bus to get an outcome in the Mal race that Shelby wanted, damning whatever results accrue, negative to Kari. And that's just sad. And I hope that Kari wakes up to how she has been mistreated again, if all that's true.
I can confirm that from another source as well that I've spoken to, that it sounds like that is extremely likely to be true. That her trust is in, she put her trust in Shelby Busch, and it doesn't seem that has wavered. And so that I think that this is this is actually quite a bombshell right here. I don't think that this is something that's been discussed anywhere in the media, anywhere, until this podcast right now. So, I think for a lot of people, especially outside of Arizona, that all they see about Kari Lake is mostly praiseworthy type information. this is, and there's more to it than that. I mean, the history of endorsements by Kari Lake is for disruptors. I mean, the MCRC would not be led. Tell me if this is a fair statement, that MCRC would not be led by Craig Berland and Shelby Busch and the other disruptors that are on the board there if it weren't for Kari Lake.
I believe that to be true. Obviously, you're asking a speculative question. So,
Sure.
Yeah, back in 2023 January, when Craig and Shelby and their slate three of their slate got elected. I believe Shelby was the mover and the shaker. She was the one who was able to obtain the big endorsements like Harry's, and Wendy Rogers, I believe, endorsed back then too. And the rest of the slate, particularly Berland, were not strong enough on their own. Shelby was the well-known name and the one who drew for her slate. Now, she pulled three of them through, two of them didn't make it. And Jeff Greenspan was one of those ones that failed. But then they appointed him to to Berland's open Mal spot thereafter, because they had enough votes on the EGC, and that's how that works. So the county leadership board. So it was just a few people had to vote him in. And then of course they managed to swing him in this past time too, by a vote of the body, but not, in my opinion, a very well-informed one.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to get to a couple comments here. So Andrew Adams, he says, LD14 chairman here, Morgan is a patriot and the MCRC is very tyrannical. Thank you for sharing that. We've got Annabella saying, I agree with Morgan on Kari Lake deserved it, deserved to be booed, I assumed. She also says that is not how it went down. And you're welcome to tell us how you think it did go down. Let's see what else we got. Dan Farley. Dan Farley is the previous LD4 chair. He says, in my experience, Morgan Perry is one of the most thorough truth finders, truth tellers that you'll find, and I think that's a very kind comment. And from what I have seen, that is definitely confirmed in all of the people that I've spoken with. Let's see. Joe Brandis says, if in Michigan, the grassroots has been split by the disruptors, do you see that in Arizona?
Yeah, absolutely. So fortunately, LD4 is not as split as I think this last vote this past week made it look. When we whipped a week and a half ago and we had our vote and we had a large attendance, so 193 credentialed. That was our largest since our organizational meeting a year and a half ago. We beat them by almost a 2-to-1 margin, and I think that's more representative of where we are actually at this point. The vote this week that was very narrow, that was just basically to say, should we have this meeting at all? It's hard to compare that directly to a vote from previous weeks or votes for specific candidates. So anyway, yes, I mean, we're less split in LD4, LD3 a year ago, MCRC, I think illegitimately took over and ran an election for them. The non-disruptor side, the more collaborative side, chose to boycott the meeting. And while I agree with them on a technical, the technical merit of their argument that the meeting was illegitimately called, we had a year to consider what happened to them. And so instead of boycotting, we decided we'd attend the illegitimately called MCRC meeting and just outvote them, which I think was a better strategic approach.
Mm-hmm. I think part of Joe's question too is are the grassroots themselves split? So are all of the grassroots disrupted, or what you would consider? I mean, You know, here in Michigan, the effort to remove Christina Caramo, who was kind of the leader of the Disruptors, was you know, it was a grassroots movement that removed her. And
so great, and thanks for dialing me in on that. And I see it now in the question. Sure. So I mean, I consider myself grassroots. The other group, you know, they've gone from Team Truth to Ultra MAGA to Ultra Grassroots. You know, whatever. Okay, you know, names don't mean a whole lot. I mean, a rose by any other name is still a rose. Whatever. So I consider myself very much grassroots. I mean, my card, that's not my business card, but my political activism card calls me, you know, I'm saying I'm an American patriot activist. So I consider myself grassroots and am on one side. The problem as I see it is that they are, you know, using their office in the county level and using their influence to whip up people to just get involved and, you know, throw the bastards out and kind of come in with pitchforks before you know anything. And so there's a lot of people, you know, grassroots, who don't know a thing about me other than what that side has been telling them about me. And not just me, but, you know, all of us. And so they are following the Democrat model where, you know, they just will spew a bunch of misinformation and then know some of it'll stick. And it's hard to fight against that. And masses of people are easy to mislead. You know, again, you can fool some of the people all the time, and all the people some of the time. So they're going with those two parts of the equation, and seeing if they can get enough PCs in that they call grassroots, that they whip up and make them feel like they're disenfranchised, because we all freaking feel like we've been disenfranchised by the public votes, the public elections. And they play off of that anger and frustration to basically lash out at people who should be their allies rather than their enemies.
right. Andrew Adams says we're all grassroots, and I completely believe, you know, agree with that. I think, you know, the only time we're not is if we are following the direction of a leader from above. Then, you know, a grassroots is a bottom up movement. And what we see here with MCRC is the opposite. It's a top down authoritarianism. And we saw the same thing here in Michigan when Christina Caramo was the chair. Complete and total authoritarianism. And Jason Mickelberg here in Michigan says, are you seeing a type of cleansing there? Because we have seen that very much here, where they are cleansing the party of you know, dissent, essentially. You know, we've seen show trials here, and, you know, within county and district parties where they are removing members for the crime of disagreeing with them.
Well, so as an example of that, you know, with me, one of the things they said in their, you know, their show trial, their witch hunt, whatever you want to call it, at the last county meeting, that ruled that you know, that we hadn't run a fair election and that we had broken bylaws and that I had broken bylaws, was there's a line in the county bylaws that say that the LD chairs are to cooperate with the county chair. Well, okay, that's a broad range of stuff, you know. Does it mean I have to cooperate if he says, hey, come help me rob this house next door? And if I'm not doing that, then I'm breaking the bylaws?
Right.
Well, my guideline in life is, you know, you, Chair Berland, have to be doing your proper duty before I have a duty to cooperate with you. And when you are overreaching and overstepping your statutory authority, I have no obligation to support that.
This is a comment that actually I like. Monica Harris, the folks in Ultra Grassroots are a humble group of people looking to save this country. You know, what I've seen here in Michigan, and, you know, this is where, because I'm here, and it's where I've done the most research, is that, and where I've met the most human beings that are disruptors, because these are fellow human beings, and I believe that they're fellow patriots, that they do have good intentions, and their intentions are good. The problem, and I'm sure even within the group, when everyone's together, that they are very loving and kind and humble, and they get along really great. And because I see that here too. The problem is in the complete lack of tolerance for dissenting views, and the inability. And and here's an example of it right here. This is wild. You're a propaganda piece. This is a joke. This is not the way that adults communicate with each other. This is not the way responsible government behaves. And the way that responsible government behaves is we make rational arguments with each other, and it's okay to disagree with each other,
Right.
and we're free to vote our conscience, like you just said, Morgan.
Yep.
And and that's where we need to be when we're attacking members, and really using the methods of the left, which is what you've been describing, against our own party.
Yeah.
And that's not just counterproductive, it's destructive.
Yeah.
That's what we need to pass. So
I don't know if you're able to go back to that last quote, pull it back up.
Yeah.
But just as an example, like
this one here.
One of the tells here is there's nothing specific in here.
Mm-hmm.
Not a single thing other than a top line slur that you could throw at anything. You could throw this at Trump. You could throw this at Biden with equal force, not with equal accuracy, but with equal force. There's just, this is wild. This is a joke. You're a propaganda piece. Okay. How about you pick one thing, ungovernable, that I have said that is specifically factually false? Just that's a challenge to you, sure. Ungovernable.
Yeah.
Put something in there that is specifically factually false. Did the people who large percentage of the people who were doing credentialing, balloting, and tallying, were they not wearing partisan T-shirts for one of the slates that they were counting votes for? Is that factually false? I mean, tell me something that I've said that's factually false. Otherwise, all you are is just smearing.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Here's even another example of it with emojis from Elizabeth Townsend. Puking clown show, apparently. So let's move on. We've got a few more comments from Andrew. We've been asking the MCRC to get to work for over a year now. Beating Democrats is what matters.
Thank you, Andrew. You're awesome.
I'm going to give him, he's got a trifecta here. The MCRC has chosen to fight and censure every Republican that disagrees with them, which is exactly what we've seen.
I haven't gotten censured yet, but I expect it soon.
Yeah. Well, they tried to remove you, so they failed at that. So, we'll see what's coming, right? Yeah. And they're probably going to censor you, and they'll probably even say, you shouldn't have been speaking publicly about it.
Yeah. Green's going to lead that effort.
Right. And Andrew's really correct. They have let us all down. And not just MCRC has not just let you down in Maricopa County. They're letting us down all across this country because we depend on Arizona winning, and I actually am very optimistic about Michigan. I think we're going to win. I think that we've got a great team now in charge of our Michigan Republican Party. We've got a lot of momentum, and I think we're going to win Michigan. And I want to see you guys win Arizona, and that's the reason why I'm doing this.
Amen.
So, if to whatever extent it helps, because I think that we can't without exposing this virus that's really within the party. Yeah. Joe Branda says typical Saul Alinsky tactic. Absolutely, that's what it is. That's what we're seeing. Proving us right. So Trump 24, the disruptors seem to have arrived on scene within the last 2 to 3 years and told that they have all the power in Michigan. They don't use the word Republican. They use the term constitutionalist. That is that's pretty similar to what you've seen there and what you've been expressing, right? Do you see that too? The same as far as the language that they use the word constitutionalists, and
actually I have not seen
people having the power.
Yeah, no, I have not seen that in Arizona. It wouldn't surprise me if it comes, but they've been using, to describe themselves, they're ultra magra, ultra grassroots. They smear the rest of us as being rhino I've been called everything from Rhino. Andrew Adams was smeared from the MCRC board stage by Brian Ferentz during a meeting as an ultra rhino. And when Andrew heard of it and he brought it to the attention of the chair, who should have disciplined that behavior, no, he protected Brian, threatened us that we wanted to leave this alone. We didn't want to pursue this. He he's threatened me and two others that way, calling me Farley. He was so riled up, he called me the previous chair's name. And then at one point, he finally got so frustrated and lost control, he kicked his chair back, stood up, and charged down off of the stage, down the steps, and got within just a few feet of Andrew Adams, who was pushing this issue, in a clear physical charge and threat, and that would be called a physical assault toward Andrew. Didn't get to him. Why didn't he get to him? Because a congressional candidate and a trained professional, security professional who was this acting sergeant at arms at the time, the actual sergeant at arms at the time, ran across the room to stand in front of him and physically restrain him. That was Chair Berland. That was how tied he was to Brian Ferentz and how much he wanted to defend Brian Ferentz's despicable behavior and clearly inappropriate behavior while being on stage, being a member at large for the county, and threatened us to leave it alone. We shouldn't, we don't want to go there. The chair's job is not to tell us where we want to go, where we don't want to go. The chair's job is to run the meeting and be impartial. That's anything but impartial. And it's certainly not to kick his chair back and charge down the stage to physically confront one of the members of the group. This was witnessed by 80 or 100 people. This is not.
I've heard this story from at least 6 people. So. Yeah,
this is anything but falsehood. This is exactly what happened. And later, he sent this paltry apology that he, apologized for his quote outburst. No, that was a physical charge at somebody. Outburst is not an appropriate description. And then he later peddled the story that, he wasn't charging Andrew. He was just upset and leaving the room. Well, you tell that to a trained security professional who's serving as a sergeant at arms, who felt the need to run across the room to get in between him and Andrew Adams. And everybody, I can tell you, my personal experience and everybody I talked with afterwards, nobody thought he was just leaving the room. That I cry BS on that. And Andrew says 100% accurate.
Yeah. Let's see. We've got JJ McCormick saying these self-proclaimed grassroots patriots choosing to escalate to Big Brother MCRC is ironic. And that's true, because that's exactly the point. The grassroots movement is bottom up. And now what we see is they want a top-down complete power structure. And this is not just Arizona, folks. This is exactly what we saw in Michigan. They actually wanted to, they released a so-called state party constitution that was supposed to supersede all the county and district bylaws, that was going that created, basically it made it possible that they had a conflict resolution committee that had the power to remove anyone basically for any reason that the committee decided. And it's crazy. In Idaho, they're doing the same exact thing. They're having show trials in Idaho. And you look to Joe's earlier question, what happens if we, the people, or this, these disruptors had all the power? We can see what they would do, because this is, they had all the power here in Michigan for a while. And the two things they did is they destroyed the party. They kicked out everybody who is competent and connected and able to get things done within the party, to make it completely useless. And they bankrupted the party, and then they wanted to rewrite the rules so that they would have eternal power, just like the Democrats want to do.
Well, and let me just chime in on that. This is exactly what happened at this past Wednesday meeting. We didn't get to the rules package, but the rules package that they provided from the MCRC leadership gave the person leading the meeting, whatever they called it, the election leader or something along those lines, gave that person fiat control, one person to remove anybody that they wanted. That was what they wrote into their rules. They completely did away with all of the parliamentary procedure that is appropriate for removing somebody. The body has the power to do that, and they wanted to strip. They wrote and disseminated meeting rules that gave one person the fiat authority to do that. I mean, are you talking top down or are you talking bottom up? That is clearly top down authoritarianism. That should be telling to people who want to know the truth. Those were the meeting rules they proposed, not that we proposed, that they proposed.
That's right. That's right. And yeah, Jason says the new Constitution.
Yeah.
Because Christina Carama's initials are KK. So, this is another good example here. So, fact. Do your own research. So, I mean, that's not a fact. The thing is that the word fact is part of the language of the disruptors in every state. They talk about facts like they actually own the facts, but then what they reference as facts are not actually facts.
Well, and Scott, this is.
Then they say do your research. I can't tell you how many times this week, just in the last week, people from Arizona, as my research is starting to get a little bit of a reputation in Arizona, that disruptors from Arizona are telling me, do your own research, go talk to Swinnick, or go listen to Dave Jose, or, and I'm like, okay, so what is their evidence? Well, have you looked into their evidence? I'm like, tell me, share it. No, you got to watch their videos.
Yeah.
That's not evidence. If there's actually if you actually have evidence, you should be able to say it's point A, B, and C. It's 1, 2, 3. This is the charges. This is the evidence. You should be able to repeat it. You shouldn't have to refer me back to some cult leader that is going to try that you think is going to program me the way that you've been programmed. That's not research. I'm sorry.
Exactly. 100%. And this is ungovernable. So this is the one that I challenged earlier. Tell me one thing that I said that's not true. What does she come back with? I don't know. Go listen to Swinnick. And again, this guy is full of it, along with Farley and Adams, whatever. Like, again, no substance whatsoever.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, it's almost laughable. It's actually pretty sad. And I'm not trying to make fun of you, Ungovernable, but this is this isn't responsible governance that you're demonstrating. And I think I'm not in Arizona. I'm from Arizona. If you were in Michigan, I would say we would love to have you be a part of the party. But this behavior isn't the right behavior. And let's find a way to get along. Let's actually have a debate where we actually talk about facts and evidence, and we try to pursue the truth together.
Yep. And
we have to be willing to be led by the evidence, not by our leaders that control the narrative flow.
Yep.
So, and Andrew again says our LD's results continue to speak for themselves despite having to deal with the MCRC. And I think that is really a heroic point, and probably a really good one to work to end on, because we are running out of time. Is that in Arizona, you have everything against you. And I talked to someone today that's an EC, and she's out knocking on doors because there's nobody else in her district that knocks on doors. And she's out doing that, and she's out doing a gazillion other things. She is just trying to focus on getting the vote out. I spoke with Candace Sarney, and she's got this, I think it's a 10-minute a day program.
They have some really great programs up there they're doing, and that's one of them. Yeah, I really admire that.
And it's awesome. And she has been, she has been so mistreated for a whole year. She's just, this has been the fight of her life. And, every day she says, she is completely unemployable, because if any employer that would look her up online would see so much trash, most of which is untrue, but there's so much of it that she can't even counter it. And here she is doing her best to get out the vote. and you guys are heroes, and you are the ones, you're trying to win this election because you know what's at stake, and you're not going to let these people who have clearly, by their actions, they demonstrate, they show us by their actions that they really don't have any interest in winning in November. So I've been hogging the mic. I apologize. Like, so, but
I mean, I've been talking plenty.
yeah, well, and I think, I think probably a great place to end is, what do you see? So what's next for LD4? You know, you've been through this, you've already been through this trial by fire in your first month. So what do you see as next? Where do you go from here?
So, I don't know what they'll throw exactly at me as chair of LD4 at the EGC meeting coming up. I suspect maybe because of this expose, they'll, like they did with others, you should never go out and talk about other Republicans that way. Well, I'm sorry, but when your behavior is that bad, it needs to be exposed. And when your actions are corrupt, you're literally reading words into bylaws and reading words out of bylaws and calling what is not a majority and changing outcomes of elections. Those things need to be exposed. And, you have the reins of power. And just like we have to expose the corruption of the Biden administration, we have to expose the corruption that you folks in the MCRC leadership are perpetrating. So that's what we have to do. The solution is not silencing people. The solution is more sunlight and exposure of the truth. So what's next for our LD? Well, county leadership is committed to just pumping in PCs, and they've got a pretty good program of inculcating them into, Morgan and Rex are bad, and Craig and Shelby are sent from heaven above, and you got to get these people out of here so we can rule the county and take over the state. And that's how we're gonna win. Even though we're fighting against Donald Trump, we're saying that we're fighting for him. So that I expect more of the same. I don't expect it to stop until it is stopped. Same thing with our federal government. It's not going to stop until we stop it. They have personal reasons to keep on going. They like the power that they're aggregating. Power is a powerful drug, and they're consuming it pretty heartily at the moment.
Right. So we have had a ton of questions, and we've gotten to most of them, certainly more than half of them. And I appreciate everyone that did contribute here. And actually, I think there's still so much of this story that we haven't told yet. So I think, if you're willing to come back on, I think that would be great. I think that there's so much more that we could cover. So
I really appreciate, Scott, getting to meet you, getting to know you, and having the opportunity to speak. And yes, I'm not suicidal. So if I'm still around,
you neither. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, my spirits are good. I'm convinced, my personal convictions are, I am called to do the best I can do, to be the most faithful and true that I can be. And results are not mine, faithfulness is mine. So that's what I'm here for. So
yeah, that's great. That's great. I do want to share, because my good friend Melanie reminded me here. She said, please help support Scott's great research and reporting. You can go to biggertruth.substack.com and subscribe there. I'm actually going to be starting a members only podcast once a week next week. That's going to have kind of my current research, that there's just so much that I just don't have time to write. And so I'm going to be doing a podcast with that just for members only on Substack. So that's going to start probably Monday or Tuesday next week. And I really appreciate you all being here. Morgan, I'm so grateful that you joined us. I think this was very enlightening. And I really believe that we can win. And it's by, there's election fraud, but we're not going to let that control us. We're going to get out the vote and we're going to beat it. And we're going to form a coalition that is not just ultra MAGA, because that's never going to win a general election. We're going to form a coalition of, conservatives and moderates within the party and independents, which I believe in Arizona now are the largest voting bloc, just like in Michigan.
Yep.
And we're going to form a coalition. We're going to win. And I think Trump knows what time it is. He knows what's going on with the disruptors. He's getting more and more of that. I strongly believe that that he has, and I'll leave it at that he, I won't say more than I should, but that I've seen him act here in Michigan in a way that really helped to bring a positive end to this. And it is my prayer that he will help with that as well in Arizona. I have no idea what that would look like. But there are solutions, and it's doing the kind of work that you guys are doing. So thank you. And we will be back. There are a lot more stories that we can get to. So,
all right. Well, you're welcome, and back at you. Thank you, Scott, for all you're doing.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And, so yeah, again, please share this podcast, hit like and subscribe, whatever platform you're on. And that'll help more people to be able to see it. I think that this is a message that it's probably the most underreported, and also I believe most important story that is going on in the country right now. And so yeah, please do share. So thanks a lot. Thank you all for contributing.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.